Before we start this one, I just want to update you all and explain why the last few episodes regarding Bennie the Beneteau, the Boatyard and the Salvager have been made private for now. A lot's been going on behind the scenes and the legal stuff is in full swing at the moment. And although I've been very careful in what I publish and have backed everything up I've found with witnesses and evidence, I still need to be careful over the next few weeks and possibly months, as Bennie the Beneteau is currently not being allowed to leave the Boatyard. I just want to point out that I haven't used the name of the salvage company, and that's for good reason. From all accounts given to me, the parent salvaging company didn't have a lot to do with the dodgy big shot who was working under their name in the Boatyard. And from what I was told by the salvaging company, they had actually sent another crew down at their own expense that actually helped a few people out for free in the mangroves. So to be clear, when I refer to the big shot salvager, I'm talking about one guy and not about the parent company. But until Bennie the Beneteau is out of that Boatyard and 100% in my possession, and maybe even out of the country, I think I need to be a little bit careful. And because the last 4 episodes are now currently hidden, and for those who are new here and don't know what all the drama's about, here's a quick recap to get you up to speed. In the last few episodes, I've been trying to buy a hurricane-damaged yacht at a suspect boatyard in the Caribbean. A big shot rogue salvager operating a monopoly in the Boatyard to lift boats was quoting so high that some owners had no choice but to walk away from their boats, and also under the threat of escalated costs from the Boatyard, some ended up giving up and selling their boats to the salvager for almost nothing. Whether that's a conflict of interest or not, I'll let you decide. Naively, I had contacted another crane company and got a quote for $1,500 to lift a boat I was negotiating on. That quote brought the whole deal down to my budget, so I put a deposit on the boat. But when the big shot salvager, who was also trying to buy the same boat, found out, he contacted me and told me that the crane lift from the other company wasn't going to happen, and the yard backed him up, shutting out the other crane company and leaving me with only one option, an $8,000 lift from the big shot. Later, I found out that the big shot was actually using the yard's Travelift, which under contract to the Boatyard should only be charged at $250 to $350 per hour. I then told the big shot that I wouldn't be ordering a lift or paying him, as I wasn't even the owner of the boat yet, as my funds transfer hadn't landed, and that once the boat was fully paid for and mine, he'd have no permission from me to lift it. But then, I also told him that if he had wanted to get paid for the more exorbitant price of $12,000 that he had earlier quoted the insurance company, that he should have just taken a risk and lifted Bennie the Beneteau without permission, and then should have tried his luck by sending the insurance company the invoice before I became the owner. At that time I told him this, he knew I wasn't the owner yet, and that there was still a few hours until the money landed and I had the bill of sale and I was the owner. And that was where we left off. So, did the big shot screw take over, and did he go for it and lift the boat? Or did he just cut his losses and leave Bennie the Beneteau 50 to just sit there on her side in the Boatyard and possibly get looted? Welcome back to What the Hell Am I Doing, and the insane saga of a hurricane-damaged sailboat. In all that's happened in this saga so far, there is one important question that needs to be asked. Is what the Boatyard and Big Shot doing illegal by creating a monopoly in the yard, or is this just something that boat owners can get trapped by legally? Which, to be honest, if it is legal, to me it's even scarier, because there's nothing you can do about it, apart from avoid the place if you're warned about it. Now, obviously I'm not a law judge, especially in the country in question, so I can't decide if it was legal or not. But what I can do is present the facts, let others be aware of the possibilities, and help them make up their own minds. So, here are the facts. Fact 1. A hurricane came and knocked over scores of boats in 2 boatyards in the Caribbean, just a kilometre from each other. Fact 2. Boatyard A only allowed one company in to lift boats, essentially creating a monopoly in their own yard. What I don't know is if they took a service fee or commission on the salvager's work. But fact number 3 is that boatyards taking a service fee or commission of subcontracted works of around 15% is common practice in most boatyards. So a plausible conclusion is that a monopoly was created by a yard in their own yard that they were then taking a commission from. And therefore, the higher the prices were charged, the higher their commission was. Fact number 4, the big shot, without any competition in Boatyard A, then invoiced owners and insurance companies up to $20,000 for a simple on-land yacht recovery lift, with Bennie the Beneteau's previous owner invoiced for $17,500 originally. Fact number 5, for the same type of recovery lift in Boatyard B just a kilometre away that didn't have an orchestrated monopoly going on, owners were charged only a few $100s. Fact number 6, in Boatyard A, I was quoted $8,000 by the Salvager to lift a 50-foot Beneteau with the yard's Travelift, which was actually operated by Boatyard A's usual Travelift operator and employee. Fact number 7, in Boatyard A, the usual cost for an emergency lift by the Travelift is $250, and that's advertised on the Boatyard's own website. Fact number 8, when I got a much cheaper quote of $1,500 from a crane operator who had just been in Boatyard A, and I informed the big shot Salvager, who was pressuring me to lift for $8,000 about that much cheaper $1,500 quote, he told me to check that plan with Boatyard A's owner before I buy the boat. And just after that, the crane operator who quoted me the $1,500 stopped returning my emails and calls, and therefore my cheaper quote disappeared. They are all verifiable facts. So let's be honest here. If Boatyard B is going to help its customers and only charge them a few $100s to get their boats lifted, and Boatyard A is going to create a monopoly and give their customers no option but to pay up to $20,000 for a lift, that's 66 times as much for the same service, or force them to abandon their yachts or sell their yachts to the big shot Salvager for a pittance, you can pretty much get a feel for what's going on. As they say, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably not a swan. But enough of that stuff for now. You came here because you want to know what happened with Bennie, right? The magic question is, did greed get the better of the big shot dodgy Salvager? And did he go for it and lift Bennie the Beneteau up off her side as he tried to score the big payday? Bennie the Beneteau was lifted right after that call, and the insurance company was sent an invoice for the lift from the Salvager for $12,000, which remains unpaid. And I haven't received an invoice yet. Bennie was now as safe as I could reasonably hope for from looting, and I now had only a few days to find and transfer the remaining money owed and complete the contract of sale. Despite what I had told the Salvager, I hadn't yet sent the balance to the insurer. Partly because I didn't have it yet, but I would have waited to send it anyway, because I really wanted a more in-depth hull inspection and to see the keel bolts, bilges and the keel matrix section of the hull that had hit the ground, and especially that bit that was resting on the blocks.
And here we have the keel blocks, which are definitely indenting the hull there.
Right after I got the word that Bennie had been lifted, I contacted Stuart the yacht carer again and asked him to please go and inspect Bennie one more time and take some pictures and video. And now that she was level, to also go inside and take some video and photos of the bilges and the keel bolts. After what seemed like forever, my final decision to go ahead was all going to come down to this. This is the video and pictures that Stuart came back to me with.
Maybe along the water line, just getting some scuffs. This is the area that she's resting on. Actually, it looks pretty good. There's hardly any damage there at all. And this is just sand and dirt. And where the blocks were, there's no indent, well, a very, very slight indentation just in this area here, but not much. Now you can hear there's a rib there. Better than nothing. There's a rib just there, so it fell right in between. the ribs, so that's probably very lucky. There, the keel join. There's not really any movement at all. Speak of, this is old rust. There, just with that old rust here, I don't think the keel's moved at all. Maybe a tiny fraction. Just a slight crack in the paint, really, but nothing much to speak of. And then this a little bit of flake of paint that's come off from here. Yeah, just going back down the starboard side. So looking along, again, just a scuff on the waterline here. Little bit of scratch to the gel coat on the waterline. And then just a few scrapes. Nothing much to worry about there. Because it's just the paint that's scratched.
Where the hull landed on the blocks was the first thing Stuart needed to check. After knocking around, it seemed that the result couldn't have been any better. The hull had leaned up against the blocks almost perfectly in the centre of one of the voids in the keel matrix. This meant that pressure on any of the stringers had somehow miraculously been avoided. Sometimes you just get lucky. This was about as good a result as I could have wished for. But there was still the keel bolts to check, and for that, Stuart needed to go inside Benny. Well, that sounds wrong. There were some small cracks on the gel coat at a couple of the keel bolts, but those cracks didn't look fresh. And if they weren't new and only surrounding a couple of the keel bolts, they were likely made when the keel was being installed and the individual keel bolts were being tightened. There were small signs of surface corrosion, probably not unusual in a 30-year-old boat, but overall, the bolts in the gel coat looked pretty good. When I looked more closely at the pictures and video, I noticed that the small gel coat cracks had been painted over at some point. But even that paint over looked like it was pretty old. What was key was that the paint over, although looking quite old, had not cracked, backing up my theory that the older cracks were probably made when the keel was installed and the bolts tightened, and that no further movement or cracking had happened since the paint over. You bloody little ripper! Now, I'm still learning, and correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. I'm not a naval engineer or architect or a forensic investigator, but to me, this looked very positive. Please let me know in the comment section if you think I missed anything though, or if my assessment is off. To me, that was the magic moment. And although this wasn't a proper survey, it was the best inspection I could get at the time. And Stuart, who also seemed to know his stuff, was also pretty positive. At this point, I thought I'd minimised my risk to an acceptable level, and I was satisfied enough. I was all in. But I had one more tiny problem. I still had to find the money. A bit later that day, I was onto it, filling out forms to withdraw my super. That's like 401k for my American friends. And I could only access that because of a car accident I had a little while before, which wasn't my fault. You take the good with the bad, I suppose. And although I was entitled to it, I was a bit worried that red tape would prevent me getting it in time, and that this now amazing deal would fall through. As I was filling out the forms, a mate called, and I told him the insane story of Benny, and a bit about the dramas and crazy goings on around this yacht, and we had a bit of a chuckle. Because he had done a bit of sailing, he asked me to send him some pictures and video, which I did. 5 minutes later, he sent me a text. My mate had lent me the money, and it was already in my account. I rang him right back. I said, "Mate, what are you doing?" He told me that I'd be an idiot if I didn't buy this boat, and that I would lose the opportunity of a lifetime, and he didn't want to see that happen. And besides, he wanted to go sailing. He also said with a hint of humour in his voice to just pay him back when my YouTube gets to where I can. Oh, he's going to be waiting. I honestly didn't know what to say, but I will say this. So I can pay my mate back, could you please like and subscribe? Okay, let me just pick up my dignity off the floor and stop begging. The subscribe button's down below. To my mate, first, why the hell would you give me money? And I'll see you for a drink really soon. It was also really nice to experience an act of kindness like that, a selfless act, out of the blue for no real reason other than he wanted to help a mate. And although getting Bennie the Beneteau lifted seemed like a win, I should have been really happy, but something was bothering me. Witnessing such a reliable greed in someone was actually not really nice. It's been pretty disheartening lately watching what humans are capable of. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and a lot seems driven by blatant greed. It's part of the reason I want to disconnect from the news, get on a boat and just sail away. Part of what I'm searching for in this journey is a more positive life experience, something that renews my faith in humanity and gives me some hope, especially after almost getting killed for no reason by an absolute moron not that long ago. This whole sailing thing isn't just about adventure, it's also about giving myself an unfiltered view of the world and seeking out and meeting good people and sharing stories, music and culture with them and everyone that wants to subscribe and watch. But I know along the way, I'll find the bad stuff too. This channel was supposed to be about the perils of sailing from the perspective of a complete novice, as you can probably tell from the intro. I never wanted to focus episodes on shady goings on in a boatyard before I was even on the water. It's just kind of gone that way. The stranger the situation became, the more I was compelled to ask questions, and the more questions I asked, the more I was shocked and wanted to warn others, and so this is where we are now. But really, all I wanted was to just buy a boat, do a bit of YouTubing as I fixed her, and sail away. As for Bennie, she was now fully upright and fully paid for, and this channel now can't claim to be the only sailing channel without a sailboat. And that's the big first piece of the puzzle in place for the original goals I set out for this channel. But a second big thing's also happened. Whilst this episode was being edited, Australia's Socceroos have now qualified for the 2026 World Cup. Go you Socceroos!
After all that pressure has maybe, just maybe, sent Australia to the World Cup in 2026.
And for me, it was now time to tick off the third big thing and fulfill a lifelong dream. One that was handed to me by my dad, and book a plane ticket to the Caribbean to go and meet my boat. But if I thought I was going to sail away into the sunset when I got there, mate, was I wrong. The yard and the Salvager had another big surprise waiting. And they were not playing nice. Coming up in the next episodes, it was time to go and meet Bennie the Beneteau. I had the longest journey of my life in front of me. 3 days and 10,000 miles involving numerous flights and airports and half the earth to cross. My first time in the USA. I go scouting for places to anchor or tie up for the 2026 World Cup, and I look for venues to watch the games in Miami. And then I arrive in the beautiful reggae, rum, nutmeg, chocolate, cricket and sunshine-loving Caribbean, where the beaches are amazing, the weather is hot and the people are chill. And coming soon, there's disbelief, even childlike awe, nervousness, maybe even some shyness and a lot of hero worship as the blunder from down under meets the legends, Sasha and Raph from Spirit Animal.
What's up, Elizabeth?
Yep, it was mega exciting, but they did eventually manage to calm down. See you in the next one.